Hey, coding teacher John, computer teacher John here. This is going to be the third lecture of four in this class. This lecture is on this computer fundamentals class. This lecture will cover the internet, web pages, security, cybersecurity, web browsers, and Google Chrome. Let's start. So first, we have to understand addresses on the internet. On the internet, there are IP addresses, or IP stands for Internet Protocol. So the internet is a bunch of computers that can send each other data. Data is information, web pages, stuff like that. Each computer on the internet has an IP address. Just as every house has a physical address, every online computer has an IP address. Fourth point. Packets of data get sent over the internet from one IP address to another, like a letter gets mailed from one physical address to another. So you can think of an IP address as like your address on the internet, sort of like how your house address is your address in the United States where like letters get mailed. So we're going to cover the IP addressing analogy, where an IP address is like a physical address, except for computers on the internet. So when you send a letter to someone, you put it in an envelope, you have a delivery address where the letter is going, you have a return address where the letter came from, and you have a shipping label. So in a sort of similar matter, when you go to a website or when you send data over from one computer to another computer, there is a delivery address, an IP address of where the data is going to. And there's a return address where the data is coming from so that if it doesn't get there, it can be rerouted. So let's say your computer, your laptop, has an IP address and it's sending some data, some letter, over the internet to some server. You can think of that as analogous to, putting your address and the delivery address on a letter, putting it on an envelope and mailing that. So this series of four numbers, 192.16.00.12, is an IP address. And this series of four numbers, 192.00.00.75, is another IP address. So the data gets sent from one IP address to another, sort of like how an envelope gets mailed from one physical address to another. Next, we're going to talk about domain names. A domain name, so this is, when I say domain name here in this slide, I mean including the top level domain, where the top level domain is the .com or the .org or whatever. But let me go back. So that is, oops, I just exited. That google.com is a domain name. .com is called the top level domain. And a domain name maps to an IP address. So it's a lot more convenient to type in google.com into the address bar at the top of a web browser than it is to type in 192.00.00.75. So that's why domain names exist. It's easy to remember and type in google.com than an IP address that goes like 123.456.789.10.1, whatever. It is possible to type an IP address into the URL bar at the top of the web browser instead of a domain name. So I've typed in IP addresses instead of domain names before. It's inconvenient, so that's why domain names exist. A URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator, and it's the way we find stuff, find web pages, find data on the internet. Note that a domain name can also contain what's called a subdomain, which tells you what portion of a website or what portion of a company or what portion of an organization you're visiting. This is blacked out. It's not supposed to be blacked out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, give me a second to exit this slide. There we go. Here's the picture I'm looking for. Maybe it's a little too big. I'm going to shrink it a little bit. There. And I'm going to present from here. There we go, a typical URL. So URL, this is like www.google.com, has a bunch of parts. You might miss this first part, but it's called the protocol. It can be either HTTP or HTTPS. There are other protocols, but they're not as often, they're not used as often. Here, so the protocol required to access the internet document. In this case, it is HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So you have HTTP:// that's the protocol. And then you have a mnemonic name of the host holding the document. So when we use the word host in a computer, we mean like a server, like a physical computer that like you can connect to, that's like far away from you. So this mnemonic name has multiple parts. A part that is on the part that's on the far right, the .com, is called the top level domain. And then just to the left of that is called the domain or the second level domain. In this case, I'm just using the word domain. And then to the left of that, here is SS Enterprise. That's called the subdomain. The subdomain is like the portion of the company or the portion of the website that you're visiting. And then you've got a path. This is very similar to a file path. In the first or second letter, we talked about file paths on a computer, where like you might have a file that's like in like the C drive, users, documents, my document docx or something like that. So an HTML document, a web document on a web server is sort of similar to a computer file with a path on a computer that's on your local device that you would explore with the File Explorer. So in this case, there's a directory path indicating the location of the web document within the host system, the host being the remote computer. And then there's a document name. In this case, the document name is Julius_Caesar.html. So that's a typical URL. This slide comes from a 2008 textbook slide, copyright 2008. Anyway, that's just using it for educational purposes. So here's an example URL, https://m.facebook.com. So here I'm visiting m.facebook.com on my phone. The M stands for mobile. So the M stands for mobile, and that's the subdomain. That's the portion of facebook.com we're visiting. .com, the com is called the top level domain, and it indicates like the type of website that is being purchased or used. In this case, it's a commercial website. And then Facebook is the domain. It's like the business name or the website name. So let's look at parts of a URL. Let's take a look at https://m.facebook.com. Facebook.com is the domain name, including the top level domain. So the top level domain is .com. So facebook.com is the full domain name, not including the subdomain. M, short for mobile, is the subdomain. The subdomain indicates what part of the domain of the website we're in. In this case, we're in the mobile subdomain. So if it were like https://www.facebook.com, that would be like the desktop version of facebook.com. Whereas if it's https://m.facebook.com, that's the mobile site version of Facebook. And they have like slightly different layouts, slightly different graphics, animations. HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. There's an S, the S in HTTPS stands for secure, and it means that it's encrypted. Encrypted is more secure than not encrypted. Just as a note, if something is encrypted, that means if someone looks at it, it looks like just a random series of letters and numbers. And in order to get back to the original, which is readable, they have to put in a password or like a key of some sort. I'm not an expert in security, but that just gives you the gist of what encryption is. It makes it so that other people can't read whatever it is you're sending or receiving on the internet. It makes it anonymous or secure. People should pay attention to and actually read the URL to avoid phishing attacks, lookalike websites that trick you. So a lot of the times there'll be someone will send you an email or a text message with a website that looks like a legit website, but it's not actually a legit website. And if you pay attention, look carefully at the characters, and you parse out the parts of the URL. You look carefully at the top level domain, the secondary domain or the middle domain, the subdomain, whether it's HTTP or HTTPS, the path. You can kind of figure out if it's like a legit website or if it's a scam or a phishing website. The last part of the domain that I'll talk about is called the query parameters. And that's the part that goes, there's like a question mark and then stuff after the question mark, including an ampersand. So for example, I visited a website, in DuckDuckGo, I typed in, DuckDuckGo is an anonymous search browser, anonymous search engine. I typed in test, and it took me to https://duckduckgo.com/? Q equals test, and, the ampersand means and, KO equals -1, and IA equals web. So each of those, so the question mark means we have query parameters. And then the ampersand here, there's an ampersand here and there's an ampersand there. Those two ampersands separate out multiple different query parameters. So Q equals test means the thing that we're searching, the thing that we're Googling in DuckDuckGo is the word test. KO is a logo indicator. KO equals -1 means don't show the DuckDuckGo logo, whereas KO equals 1 means show the DuckDuckGo logo. And IA equals web, that just means that the search is happening on a web browser and not in like a native mobile app. The KO equals -1 and the IA equals web can be removed. So you can just do https://duckduckgo.com/? Q equals test. And that does the same search for the word test in DuckDuckGo. And then it has less sort of junk at the end of the URL. One very common source of junk at the URL, if you share a URL, is UTM query parameters. So for example, I saw a UTM query parameter on Nextdoor. Someone shared a Nextdoor link with me. This was the Nextdoor link right here. Nextdoor.com/p/whatever, but there's this question mark, UTM source equals share, and extras and UTM campaign equals whatever, and share action. All of that, like very long, confusing, hard to read junk, is Google Analytics advertising tracker. It says like, this is where the link was generated from, this is who created the link, what time the link they created, how many shares of the link was made, etc. It's tracking for links. That's all removable. Like this question mark here and everything after the question mark can all be removed to make a URL shorter. There are apps like URL shortener apps that will do that for you to make your links, your URL shorter for sharing with people. I like using a URL shortener app because it forces me to pay attention to the links and it shows me like before and after the junk is removed. And also when the junk is removed from a link, it's easier for me to look at it and determine what is the domain, what is the top level domain, what is the subdomain, etc. In this case, https://nextdoor.com, there's no subdomain. There's a top level domain .com. And then there's a domain, or second level domain called Nextdoor, but there's no subdomain. There's no www dot, there's no m dot. Subdomain is optional. Now pop quiz. Look at the URL https://www.google.com. What is a domain name, including the top level domain? What is the subdomain? Is the connection encrypted or not? How can you tell? Are there query parameters? So just as a reminder, the top level domain is .com, and the subdomain, I'm making it too easy for you. So if we include the top level domain, the domain name is google.com. That's when someone buys a domain name from a hosting site like the website GoDaddy or Namecheap or Hostinger or something like that. They'll buy a domain name including the top level domains. They'll buy like google.com or like mywebsite.org or whatever. So in this case, the domain name, including the top level domain, is google.com. What is the subdomain? So if we look here, the subdomain is what comes before the domain. So the subdomain is like everything from https:// all the way until the domain. So in this case, the subdomain is www. So is the connection encrypted or not? How can you tell? Well, if you look at the scheme or the protocol, HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. The S at the end stands for secure, and it means it's encrypted. So it is encrypted. And are there query parameters? So we talked about query parameters, the question mark and the ampersand at the end of the URL. And there are no query parameters. There's no question mark or ampersand at the end of that URL. So let's take another look, understanding the parts of a URL. There's a scheme, HTTP or HTTPS. Sometimes I also see like mail to or magnet, but the vast majority of the time it's HTTP or HTTPS. Then there's subdomain like www dot or m dot. The subdomain can be really long and it can contain dots in it. Then there's the domain, also called the second level domain. Then there's the top level domain like .com, .org, .net, whatever. Then there's the path to resource, which is like separated by slashes. Then there's the query parameters, the question mark Q equals whatever. And lastly, and I don't see this often, there's this thing called a fragment identifier, which jumps to a certain section inside of a web page. So in this case, there's a section inside of a web page, and the name of that section is Git commands you should know, and the fragment identifier jumps to that section of the web page. So those are the parts of a URL. Now, it's important to know and identify the parts of a URL to protect yourself against phishing and smishing attacks. A phishing attack is when someone sends you an email that tries to get you to click a malicious link. A smishing attack is when someone tries to do that over SMS. SMS is another word for texting or text messages. So let's take a look at this smishing, this text message, SMS phishing attack that was made against the text message phone of someone I know. Let's see. So let's read this. From Austin9 at spvpasadena.app. Okay, I don't know who that is. That's a first red flag. But then let's keep reading. iMessage. Today at 10:36 a.m. USPS ground, schedule your delivery again. We attempted to deliver your USPS package. However, we were unable to complete the delivery to you. This package requires a personal signature upon delivery. Please follow the instructions below to set up a new delivery time. Reschedule now. https:// okay, so that's encrypted. www.usps.com at servicedgam.sbs/track-confirm. Now here's the issue. What is the domain name? If they were to register a domain name with like a domain name company like GoDaddy or Hostinger or Namecheap, would the domain name that they reserve be usps.com? Or would it be servicedgam.sbs? Note that the thing on the far right before the path. So track confirm we know is the path at the end of the web page, and I can assume that SBS is the top level domain. SBS I think stands for side by side. It's for like certain social websites. But it looks when you first look at it, you look at this and you think, oh, I see USPS.com. This must be USPS.com. And when you click on the website, when you originally click on the website, it's been taken down. But when you originally click on the website, it looks exactly like USPS.com. They took the HTML, they took the CSS, the layout looks like USPS.com, the images look like USPS.com. And then it says you have the following choices, and then it tries to get you to put in your information when you visit the site. So that is a smishing website, a text message phishing website. And that is not the real USPS.com. So now trick question, https://www.usps.com at service_djam.sbs/track_confirm. Don't click that link. It is, or at least was, a smishing website. I believe the site has been taken down by this point. But what is a domain? Hint, domain can't contain an at or a period inside it. Domain doesn't include top-level domain. So when I say domain here, I mean second-level domain, or just domain name not including the top-level domain. So in this case, the top-level domain is SBS, which stands for side-by-side. It's like .com or .org or .net, but it's .sbs. So that's the top-level domain. But then what is the domain, like the domain name not including the top-level domain? Well, let's think about it. What is the subdomain? Hint, think subdomain at gmail.com. Well, if gmail.com is the domain name, and then everything that goes before the at is part of the subdomain, where like at is used like a dot for separating the domain name from the subdomain. So in this case, the domain name is the full domain name, including the top-level domain name, is service_djam.sbs, and the subdomain is www.usps.com. Note that a subdomain can have dots in it. So this www.usps.com is not the domain name usps.com. That is the section, the subdomain of the website service_djam.sbs. So the domain, including the top-level domain, no, the domain not including the top-level domain is service_djam, and the domain name, including the top-level domain, is service_djam.sbs. And the connection is encrypted. You see HTTPS. And are there any query parameters? There are no query parameters. There's just a file path, track confirm, which looks legitimate. You think like, oh, I want to track confirm my package. I click on the website with track confirm in the name. But notice, hint, this was a real website, service_djam.sbs. Don't visit. I think the website has been taken down, but basically, a lot of the times when when you're not sure, you can try and visit the homepage without the subdomain. So in this case, the homepage would be https://service_djam.sbs, and you could visit that from like an incognito browser for more sandboxing, more security, and be ready to close the window at any moment in case something pops up. But yeah, this is not USPS. This is service_djam. This is not USPS.com. This is service_djam.sbs. And it is a phishing website, which came from this text message. So one thing to watch out about it is like, you have to ask yourself, like, who is it coming from? Well, it's coming from Austin9 at spvpasadena.app. Who is that? We don't know, but that's already one red flag. And then lastly, if you know how to read a URL, if you know the difference between a subdomain, which can have dots in it, and a domain name, including the top-level domain, you can identify that this is not USPS.com. So what that actually was a phishing website. So for example, this is another phishing website. It says log in to your PayPal account, paypal-accounts.com. So if you pay attention, there's 2 dashes. Why would they put 2 dashes instead of 1? Well, because that's not really PayPal. it just looks like PayPal, and they're trying to steal your PayPal email and password to get the money out of your account. So let's look at some things. So in phishing websites, there's a suspicious URL with added words and no HTTPS : at the front, also no SSL certificate. So that it doesn't always have no HTTPS, sometimes there isn't HTTPS, but they're more likely to not have an HTTPS. Then there's a request for sensitive information that looks exactly like the official sign-in page. So they use the same HTML and CSS. They clone the website. They go through the website and they take all the HTML and CSS, all the front end information, and use it to clone the website. And here there's a presence of a dummy security seal. eBay uses Norton Secured, and a legitimate seal that can be clicked on to reveal detailed security information. So one thing I sometimes notice on phishing websites is there'll be like seals and links, maybe like a link to social media or a link to some security thing, and you click on the link to social media or you click on the link to the security thing, and the link doesn't work, it doesn't take you anywhere, but you can look at the link and the link looks like the same as on the actual website. But yeah, if the social media links don't work, that's a red flag, or if the VeriSign identity protection link doesn't work, that's another red sign. So we're going to talk about phishing, vishing, and smishing. So phishing, you can think of it as like someone's fishing to with a fishing rod and a hook to try and hook their information. Phishing is email messages claiming to be from reputable sources. They urge the recipient to reveal personal information online or download malware. Vishing. Vishing is fraudulent phone calls urging the recipient to share sensitive information that can be used for identity theft. And smishing is text messages that urge the recipient to click a link that downloads malware onto their device or links to a spoofed website. So phishing is email, vishing is phone, the V in vishing stands for voice, so you use your voice to scam. And smishing, the S in smishing stands for SMS, where SMS is a text message. So what we just saw in the previous example with this USPS link, this was smishing. This was a smishing link from a smishing text message. Okay, malware. Phishing scammers try to steal your password or put malware, where malware is mal or bad software, on your computer. Malware can do bad things like create bad pop-ups. Maybe there's some sort of inappropriate pop-ups that try to get you to click on something. Spy on what you type with your keyboard, including your passwords that you type in via a type of malware called a keylogger. Malware can encrypt your files and try to charge you money to decrypt them. This type of malware is called ransomware, etc. So if your files are encrypted and you don't have the password, they just look like random unreadable characters. So you might have important documents that have been encrypted by some hacker, and you can't read them anymore because they're encrypted. They're just random characters, and the hacker tries to charge you money to decrypt. They do this to businesses a lot, like big businesses. Detecting and removing keyloggers. Follow these 5 steps to eradicate your device of keylogging malware. Do software inventory check. So you should know all the software that's installed on your device, whether it's on your computer or on your phone. There's when you go to the App Store or you look on the list of apps on your phone, there's a list of apps that are installed. Check browser extensions. So Google Chrome or Firefox can have browser extensions. Research suspicious or unfamiliar programs. So if you press Control-Alt-Delete on a Windows program, on a Windows computer, it'll pop up the task manager, and the task manager will show programs that are running on the computer. And if there's a program that looks suspicious, or maybe it's using up all the CPU, you can Google the name of the program. Remove, delete, or uninstall malicious programs. You can uninstall the Chrome extension, you can uninstall them from the Windows computer. And if necessary, perform a factory reset. That's a factory reset on the phone, or like reinstalling Windows, factory reset on the Windows computer. Sometimes you can also do like a revert to the previous state of the computer, like using Time Machine. I think like Apple has an app called Time Machine where you can like reverse to a previous point in time, a checkpoint, a save point. I have a story about keyloggers. When I was in grade school, high school, middle school, we used to play video games on the library computers after school. And one kid installed keyloggers on all the library computers. The name of the keylogger was called Family Keylogger. And the purpose of Family Keylogger was to allow parents to spy on what their kids are typing on a computer. Unfortunately, Family Keylogger was being used to spy on what other people were typing in the library. And this kid who installed Family Keylogger on all the library computers stole everyone's usernames and passwords and sold their accounts on eBay. So the people who typed their usernames and passwords on the library computers lost their accounts to having their username and password stolen by this thing called a keylogger that records the keystrokes and sends it to someone else. One thing that, because of that incident, that we all started doing is we stopped typing in our usernames and we stopped typing in our passwords sequentially. So we stopped typing in our passwords sequentially. So if our password was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we wouldn't type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We would type in 5, 6, 7, 8, click to the beginning, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or we would type in like 1, 2, 7, 8, and then we'd click on the middle and type in 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's a habit I've gotten into because of the past experiences with keyloggers. Because keyloggers record what keys are being typed, but they don't necessarily like get the order right or the timing right if you don't type them in the right order. So that was a thing that we would do to avoid keyloggers when I was in grade school. And it just stuck with me. Another thing that I want to mention is that security is a series of habits. So like every time you walk out the door of your apartment or your house, you lock the door. Or like every time you leave the car, you lock the car. That's a habit. Likewise, like not typing in the password sequentially to avoid keyloggers became a habit, something we just do automatically every time we type in a password. So security is a series of habits. You have to get into the habit of being secure. Ransomware. The victim opens a malicious attachment or file. The ransomware encrypts local data and demands payment to restore access. Files stay locked until the ransom is paid or a backup is restored. So there's a program that's on computers called like Time Machine or Restore Backup or something like that, which can save your computer to a point in the past. And you can use that program like Time Machine. I think Apple has Time Machine. I think Windows has like Windows Backup Restore or something. You can restore your computer to that point in the past, the entire file system, the entire computer. And what that does is if your ransomware got like downloaded on like Monday, you could restore the entire computer to a point before Monday, maybe Sunday. And so the files would be unencrypted back to their original state. So you back up your hard drive disks so you can restore to a pre-ransom state. Use incremental backup. So an incremental backup is when the changes to the hard drive are backed up. So they're backed up incrementally, so that doesn't use up as much space as backing up everything in one independent backup that's not incremental. Man-in-the-middle attack. So we're talking about cybersecurity topics. A man-in-the-middle attack, the attacker positions themselves between the victim and the sender, intercepting traffic in both directions. Neither side detects the interception. The attacker can read or modify data as it passes through. So if an internet connection is not encrypted, so if it uses HTTP instead of HTTPS, unencrypted web traffic is vulnerable to this type of attack. Never type your password into an unencrypted website, a website that starts with HTTP instead of HTTPS, as unencrypted internet traffic is not obfuscated from third parties. So on the early days of the internet, the only websites that were encrypted were websites where people would type in their username and password. So Amazon.com initially only had one encrypted page, and it was the page where you type in your username and password. But all the other pages were not encrypted. And the issue with that is someone on the same public Wi-Fi network could see like what you're browsing on Amazon, but at least they couldn't intercept your username and password. Whereas if the whole website were not encrypted, if the whole website, Amazon.com, were HTTP, and you were on a public Wi-Fi network, not encrypted, someone could steal or intercept your Amazon.com username and password. So that's called a man-in-the-middle attack. Next, we're going to talk about malware. What are some signs of malware? Windows Defender or other antivirus, anti-malware software detected malware in your computer and you are sure it's not a false positive. That's a obvious sign of malware. Pop-ups disappearing on your desktop all the time. No, pop-ups appearing on your desktop all the time. These could be ads, random demand, scare tactics, or anything else popping up. So you want to, if you're in a web browser and something pops up like that, like something scary pops up saying like you have a virus, click here immediately. You want to use Control-Alt-Delete or just close the entire browser immediately. Don't let them scare you into clicking on something. So if files are encrypted or deleted from your system, that's a sign of malware. Constant redirection on your web browser. So if you visit a website and it redirects to something inappropriate that you didn't mean to go to, and it does that whenever every website you visit, it constantly does that. Someone's redirecting your web traffic. That's a sign malware is there. That might be an add-on on your Google Chrome web browser, like an extension that's doing that. Another thing is your computer is using 100% CPU/GPU all the time. That could be a sign someone's using your computer to mine cryptocurrency that uses up CPU or GPU, or that they're running some program on your computer. The only way to guarantee all malware is removed from your system is to do a clean install. That's when the computer is wiped and a fresh install of the operating system is put on the computer. The anti-malware tools listed below can only take their best shot at removing malware from your system. There's no guarantee that any tool listed in the guide or not will remove all malware from your system. Antivirus/anti-malware tools can only think your system doesn't have malware. They can't be 100% sure. If you'd like to remove malware from your system, you can run the 3 tools listed below. These malware remediation steps that I got from Reddit, the tools listed are rkill, Malwarebytes, ADW Cleaner, and Hitman Pro. Normally what I do is I just wipe the computer and reinstall. I use the Linux operating system, which is nice for doing that because Linux is free and open source, and I can just freely wipe and reinstall without having to worry about having like a license or paying for a license. I believe with Windows there's a way to wipe and reinstall, but you have to make sure that you have like the license, or you have to get the license to make sure that the Windows that's being used has been paid for, and it's not like, yeah. But so it's good to know how to do a clean install of your operating system in case you do get malware, because that is the only 100% guaranteed way to remove malware. So we've been talking about malware, and now we're going to talk about 2 types of errors. Now we're going to get into the relevance of how this is related to malware in a second, but the 2 types of errors are false positive and false negative. A type 1 error is a false positive, and a type 2 error is a false negative. So we can think of like a pregnancy test can be positive. If a pregnancy test is positive, that's supposed to mean that someone's pregnant. But a false positive means the pregnancy test is positive, but they're not pregnant. So saying you're pregnant to this man is a type 1 error. It's a false positive because the pregnancy test says you're pregnant, but you're not pregnant. Whereas a type 2 error is called a false negative. That's when the test says you're negative, but you're actually positive. So type 1 error is the man who's not pregnant is pregnant, and a type 2 error is the woman who is pregnant is not pregnant, according to the test. So those are 2 different types of errors that you can make. And we'll talk about how you can make those types of errors with regards to cybersecurity. So I have a story. One day I got a phone call from a woman claiming to be from my bank. She said she had a refund for me. I initially believed she was a scammer. I almost hung up, but then I noticed she spoke in perfect, proper bank employee English. Hello, bank here. Unlike most of the scammers who talked to me. I looked at the caller ID and asked what number she was calling from. She gave me a number that matched the caller ID. I then told her to wait for a minute as I Googled the number. The first website that popped up from Google was the number that I typed in, and it was the number from my bank's customer service department. I rightly concluded that she was not a scammer. So initially, I made a false positive error for scamming. I thought you are a scammer, and I was wrong. So that's a type 1 error. So type 1 error is like I say like, you're a scammer, and you're not actually a scammer. So that's like saying like you're pregnant, but you're not actually pregnant. That's a type 1 error. So type 1 errors happen, but type 2 errors, in the case of scamming, happen much more often. Type 2 errors regarding scammers. A type 2 error is when you think somebody is not a scammer and you are wrong. It's a false negative. It's the flip of a false positive. This is much more common than thinking someone is a scammer and being wrong, but both are possible. This type of error can result in significant loss and or damages to you. So we're going to go back to this UPS text message. So this, from the perspective of the person who got this message, this is a type 2 error. This is a false negative. This is me thinking, oh, this is not a scammer. This is USPS.com, but it actually is a scammer. And this can result in you losing all the money in your account. This can result in you losing money in your bank account. This can result in malware or a keylogger being installed on your computer that steals all your usernames and passwords that you type in. So this is much more dangerous than a type 1 error when it comes to security. So type 1 error, like with the story with the bank, I've had multiple type 1 errors in my life with regard to security, but like they're usually not that big of a deal. Like it might be like a small refund from a bank that I forgot I was supposed to get, or like some like class action settlement lawsuit where like some security lawsuit was supposed to give me like $15 or something, but they're not that big of a deal. Whereas these type 2 errors are a big of a deal. You can lose, like you can have your bank account drained, you can lose all your funds. And then once you have like a keylogger on your computer, even if you call the bank and they restore your funds, you just end up typing in your password again. And then when your password gets typed in again, they just steal it again a second time because they're still on your computer, the keylogger, the thing that stole the password that you typed in. So that's an issue. And once they're in, it's very hard to get them out. Security, so I'm going to go to the 4th bullet point. Security is a series of habits. Habits like locking the door when you leave the house. Habits like checking the URL bar on a website before you put in your password to make sure it's actually the website you believe it is. Habits like checking who an email is from. In Microsoft Outlook, you have to hit reply all to see the real email address that it's from. But like a lot of times when you get scam emails, when you hit reply all, you'll see that it's either from or like CCing some sort of really fishy long email address. But you have to pay attention to that stuff. You have to get into the habit of checking. All right, how to identify a phishing email. You've won a $1,000 gift card, so that's a too good to be true offer. Another example that I've seen is like some sort of like Nigerian prince has left you an inheritance of $10 million. And you're like, why would a Nigerian prince leave me an inheritance of $10 million? Or like some billionaire has left you some large amount of money. And then discrepancies between sender's name and email address. So here it's like giftcardsdirect.com, but it's like the I is replaced by a 1. and then it's like .con instead of .com or something. So it could be some sort of fishy long name or some fishy long email address. Suspicious links, so the link might try to look like it's from one website, but it's actually from another website. Dear customer, so they might, to try to avoid the spam detection, they might replace characters with similar looking characters. Like they might replace like an A with an acrylic A or like an L with a 1 or something like that. There's a sense of urgency where it's like, oh, I have to act immediately. And let's see, they request sensitive information, so they try to get you to log in now. And sometimes there's like a suspicious attachment, like you don't know why this thing is attached, but they want you to download it or click it. So don't download their attachment. If they're from like a suspicious email address, don't reply, don't do anything. Yeah, watch out for those characters, those like weird characters that don't look right. But yeah, that's a phishing email. Sometimes, one thing I've noticed is sometimes I visited a website before by accident because I typed in the wrong thing, and it popped up. This website had a pop-up that said "virus detected. Click here to get antivirus and remove the virus." But there was no virus on the computer. It was just like a HTML like web page in the browser that was saying that. But like it was flashing, it tried to like, maybe there was like a sound effect. It was like very scary looking, right? Warning, virus detected. Protect your personal and financial information. Call virus removal tech support. Security risk, red. Critical virus alert. Enable virus protection. Hello, ignore. And they try to get you to click on like hello and like download their antivirus, which is actually the virus. So it's kind of unintuitive because they're trying to get you to download a virus by telling you that you have a virus and you need their antivirus. So that's like a trick I've seen before. Now we're going to learn Google Chrome. This is going to be the last thing before the end of this lecture. We will do an interactive exercise to learn Google Chrome web browser. This is called the address bar or the URL bar. We've talked about how this google.com is the full domain name, where .com is the top level domain and Google is the secondary level domain or just the domain. We've talked about how the question mark is the query parameter, and then you have like zx equals something. That's a parameter, a value that's being passed. When you visit a web page, you should know how to navigate back to the previous page. On my Android phone, I have an old Android phone. It has 3 button support on the bottom. There's a button here to go back. If you don't have that button there, you can swipe to the left and it should navigate back. I'm not 100% sure because I don't have that swipe gestures. I don't like swipe gestures. I prefer pressing buttons. But there is a swipe gesture to navigate back. Then there's the ... to give you more options on your web browser. So we'll look at some of these more options. There's go forward. So if you've navigated back, you can press that to go forward. There's also some more options under go forward. There's star to favorite. There's the download icon to the right of the star to download. I think that's to download the web page. Maybe like as like an HTML file. There's an I for information. There's a circle to refresh the web page. Then there's 2 types of tabs. There's new tab and new incognito tab. If you create an incognito tab and you visit a website, the website won't be in your history. So if someone gets your computer and they look at your history, they won't see that website in your history. Whereas if you go to a regular new tab and you visit a website, it will be in your history. Incognito is not as anonymous as you think it is. Like if I make a website and a person visits my website from an incognito tab on their computer, I still know that they visited my website because it's incognito on their machine. It's not incognito on my machine. So that's just something to keep in mind. There's tab groups, which are like a group of related tabs, so that if you want to like close all of them at once, they can be in a tab group. There's history, which we talked about. That's the history of the web pages you visited. There's delete browsing data, which is like you can delete cookies. Cookies are file that stores things like your, it allows people to sort of track you online for advertising purposes and feed you ads, and it also stores your sign-in information. So like your username and password can be, it's hashed, so they don't store it in plain text, but if you delete all cookies, including session cookies, you lose your sign-in on the website. There's downloads, which is the things you've downloaded on the web while browsing the web. That goes in a folder called downloads. There's bookmarks. So there's a star there for bookmarks, and then there's a star up at the top. Those are websites that you've bookmarked to make it convenient to visit later. There's recent tabs. So those are tabs that you visited recently. There's zoom to zoom in. You could also pinch zoom, but zoom usually has like a percentage. Like you can say like zoom 120% and everything gets 20% bigger. There's a share option to share like your web page URL with another person, so you can like text it to someone. I like to share it to the URL cleaner because that like makes the links shorter. I use Leon URL Cleaner, Leon. It works for Android. I think it also exists for iPhone. There's, I'm not 100% sure if it exists on iPhone. There's find in page, so you can search a web page for a particular word or a particular group of text. There's translate to translate a web page to another language. There's show reading mode. There's add to home screen if you want to create a link to the website on your home screen. And there's desktop site, which is like, some websites have like a mobile version of the site and a desktop version of the site. So desktop site lets you access the desktop version of the website. Sometimes I use that if the mobile version doesn't have a feature I need. So that's the Google Chrome menu. We're going to talk about cookies. I recommend people try and reject cookies by default. So like we talked about security. One thing about security is things should be like private or anonymous or rejected unless you have a reason for them to be not private or not anonymous or not rejected. So in this case, like cookies allow you to be tracked for advertising purposes. Like advertisers will follow you on the web using them. And the only time I ever accept cookies is if I'm on a website where I want ads from that website in the future, and I want them to know like what am I visiting, what am I interested in, so I get relevant advertisements from them. But you should try and only get cookies from websites you trust. The exception from that is the sign-in cookie, also called the session cookie, and that's just the cookie that's used for remembering that you're signed in. Cookies just store memory or state for a website. So here it says cookie settings. We use cookie and similar technologies to help personalize content, tailor and measure ads, and provide a better experience. By clicking accept, you agree to this as outlined in our cookie policy. Okay, and that is everything. So we went a little fast. We've got 8 minutes left, but I think I'll end it here. Thank you for watching this lecture. Tomorrow's lecture, so today we did the web browser, Google Chrome. Tomorrow we'll do Gmail. We'll also do Google Drive. If we have time, we'll do Google Docs, and we'll talk more about security, different kinds of scam. Oh, and social media. We'll talk about that too. But yeah, this is the end of this lecture. Thank you for participating in lecture 3 out of 4. Goodbye, class.